what the groups did talk about, and then we can make a decision as to whether or not people want to stay longer.
Sounds good.
So Jana, are you reporting for your group?
No, Twinkle took notes for us. And so Twinkle, I did taking notes also involved reporting. I don't know if you knew that, but I hope you're okay with that. Thank you.
Okay, yes, I'm happy to report back. You want me to do that right now or okay?
Yes, and email it. So every group needs to email me a composite or each person's separate responses, however you want to do it. And I would appreciate receiving them by October 12th.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Thank you.
So overall, it seems that most have a strong desire to have people close to them that they can meet with, hyper local, not just regional.
Right.
And there were some questions or some requests that the groups be not just friendship groups, but that they are able to receive some direction and information from the NAUA, as well as for the groups to be able to give direction back to the NAUA. Similar, I guess, to the way regional groups worked before they were part of before the UUA dissolved them. But again, on a hyper local, pretty much everyone did stress how I don't know if anyone used this word, but how isolated they felt in regards to their local congregations really being, someone used the word woke, far left, basically adopting the ideology of the UUA and leaving very little room for them to be able to maintain relationships with sometimes their closest friends, pre all of this happening. So, what else? Feels like, I don't want to name anyone's names, but just going through this overall and I'm just doing a general overall. So for question number 1, there were a few in our group that are really active in the NAUA and some who are anticipating becoming even more active. And then there were a few that were not certain either through abilities or through desire exactly what extent they wanted to be involved with NAUA until it was a little bit more clear perhaps what they could receive from it. And so there was questions for the membership services, particularly for membership services to really generate some programs that would be beneficial. So what else? I will say one of the things that I added was about congregations to make it possible, figure out what that magic thing is that congregations, current UUA congregations, what benefits they would like to receive that they're paying heftily for through the UUA, but not really receiving the support. And if there's a way that the NAUA could offer that so that it would be possible for more congregations and UU organizations to become members of the NAUA, as well as then hopefully opening or freeing the clergy and religious professionals from the power that the UUA currently has over them regarding their jobs. Yeah, but overall, I think it was overall the sentiment was that they would like to have a more close-knit community. And we did get to question number 3, where one of our cohort said that her emphasis is for church to be the moral compass for her, and then take that out into the world, where out into the world she would focus on the political, the social, environmental issues, and have her congregation be that place for spirit. My word would be spirituality. And we did a thumbs up, thumbs down to that because we were like 13 seconds left. And by and large, most of the group agreed with that we want to be inspired. And then rather than have the NAUA focus on political things.
Thank you.
Thanks, Twinkle.
Joyce, your group?
Okay, I took notes for Joyce's group. I'm going to try to make this real brief because it was an interesting group. A lot of people had been more involved in NAUA, were less involved. Some were very involved, and some were just new. There was, like in the other group, a real interest in local people we can contact face to face, even if it's in some cases an hour and a half drive. If you can, more activities where we can do face to face, as well as the regional, the regional larger group. A great sense of needing spirituality. Yeah, there are all kinds of places we can get involved in social justice right now, but that we really needed, a spiritual home, and with that spiritual home, there's that great sense of loss of the 7 principles and the 6 sources. If there's something that can come back to replace that or be a center for that, I think there are legal problems, with us taking them on, but there was that was such a loss for so many of us, that and then kind of taking also the history of, and we can take and claim a lot of the history of Unitarian Universalism and bring that in, and share that. And so if we take and we develop some things that we can say are ours, and then market them, not only to our friends and our former congregations, but to new people as well, where we are saying, this is who we are, this is what we're trying to do. Would you join us? And again, focusing on spirituality and and things like the 7 principles and the 6 sources, or whatever we come up with to replace that. Face to face, let's see. And also providing services. One person indicated they'd been providing a service, and then there really wasn't interest in that, and they'd like to see, can we come back and provide those, services? This is services for ministers and musicians to find work if they've been pushed out, and that's real. And there was the mention that, which everybody applauded, that the NAUA Academy is now going to be focusing more on the spiritual than on the political. And everybody was really excited about that. I think, and speak up if I've missed something important, but that's what I've got.
Anything else from that group? Okay.
Cheryl did a great job. Thank you.
All right. Danny, there you are.
Okay, so I'll try to be brief. Basically, we're really talking about 2 main topics. The first one, how are you currently engaged with the NAUA? Could you hit that? And we got off topic a little bit, but basically most people were involved with, some people were involved just circles and all the way up to people being involved with really transforming their congregations, moving them over to NAUA. So basically a lot of people yeah, I think that was the main thing there. We people felt like some people felt like they had to lay low from due to UUA, and then a lot of people felt like the NAUA hadn't made a big impact onto a lot of congregations in terms of they didn't, a lot of people didn't even know about us. So that was something that was talked about. The one thing that really stood out, I think, was that the way for us to get our message out should be to let people know who we are as a religion, and also that we should try to figure out how to get with the youth, to the millennials and younger people, and a suggestion was made why religion went obsolete, a book by that title. And yeah, the next part, the second part was, in these troubled times, what should we focus on social justice issues? How, and also combining that, how do we how do we transform society, or should we be involved with that? And there was, the general consensus was that we should be an activist. We should be activists. We should go out into the world and let people know who we are. But at the same time, there was a concern that that's exactly what split the UUA up, and how we separated. So there was a concern about that. In response, there's certain organizations like Braver Angels and Boston Basics, for instance, who have universal messages trying to bring people together, and maybe that we would do well to align with groups like that for recruiting and also for to spread that message. Partnering with groups like that. And that was probably a pretty poor summary, but if anybody has some, if I've missed something, please speak up.
Summary. That was a good summary.
Thank you. Anyway, I think that's it. Yeah, Ron.
I think there was some discussion about the importance and priority of recruiting and whether or not that really does fit in with member services. So I'll just stay with that. That was another point made.
Thank you. I did miss that. Appreciate it.
If I could add, I think Lincoln just threw a key question into the chat. Should the NAUA officially be a denomination? Can we extend this for another 9 hours to discuss that?
Oh, boy. We can give you 9
Lincoln,
minutes, guys.
That's great.
Lincoln, you're always insightful. That is a true question to ask. I said in my breakout group that I think the NAUA is still in an identity crisis mode, has not yet settled on what it, quote, really is.
I agree with
that. But it's a worthwhile question. Actually, if the question is not answered, we go into what is officially called drift. And so thanks for posing that question, Lincoln.
I just want to add one more piece that we talked some about and that came up in another group, is that there was the sense that NAUA should be a moral voice. And some people would say that's a spiritual voice, but that aspect of our identity needs to be out there and can be used for recruiting. So I just wanted to add that. If anybody who has, any further responses, those of you who are writing up the minutes, send them to me at judi.durham@gmail.com. Oh, Roy, do you have your hand up? Okay. And if there are people that would like to stay on for another 10 minutes instead of 9 hours and discuss the question of should we become a denomination, I'm certainly willing to stay for another 10 minutes. Otherwise, thank you all for coming to the workshop and sharing your thoughts. That is, as I have said, a foundation of the Member Services Committee, is listening to what people think, feel, and want. So thank you.
Thank you, Judy.
Thanks, Judy.
Yes, and thank you, Judy, for
Thanks, Judy.
sponsoring this and all the other work that you do. Great job. Great
Thanks.
job.
Judy, thank you, Joyce, Jan. See you this afternoon. Bye.
Bye. See you all later, unless you stay.
I'm going to hang in for a few minutes. I want to comment on that question. That
Yeah.
here.
I want to listen, so.
Well, maybe
Terry, did you say you have the answer to the question?
I haven't used my 9 hours yet. But let me further extend the challenge by I think it's an epistemological problem that really hurts NAUA is that we're trying to be a service for individuals, and you look at most of our programming, 90% of it is for individuals, sort of the lone wolves or the disenfranchised, if you like that, the academy, and the various circles. And yet we also have congregational members. And the problem with I think with a lot of our congregations, some of the larger ones, we never see or very, very rarely see their members, because I think that at the bottom of it, there's this sense that the NAU is competing with that organization, that the more time and money and energy the members spend on NAUA, perhaps the less time, money, and energy they have for the local congregation. So I think, we try to live in both worlds, but I think it's challenging and maybe impossible. And my second and final comment is that this question of a denomination, I think I've tried to look for some definitions. What is a congregation? And I know that Todd Eckloff is particularly adamant that we should not be a denomination, because and if you listen to his recorded sermon about 3 weeks ago, why I'm not a UU, he's quite clear there that in his mind, the denomination tries to take theological leadership things to itself which only belong at the local level, and therefore he really wants to shy away from that word. But to me, right now, NAUA is acting at a church level, not a denomination level. And and as I said, we've seen how the UUA is trying to go much further in theological leadership, a whole bunch of different social action that Todd strongly feels it belongs at the local level, and ministerial appointment, and it goes on and on and on. So I think before we decide whether we're a denomination or not, we need to be clear what we mean by the denomination. And that's my
I think Todd was very adamant that he considers himself a Unitarian, not a Unitarian Universalist, but the Unitarian in the old, denominational sense.
Yeah.
So I think all of us, I don't know, I certainly consider myself a Unitarian. I have for years. So I wouldn't need a new denomination. To me, the Unitarian is the denomination. But
John, you've had your hand up for a while. Go ahead.
I can't see
Yes,
that.
well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Whoops, I
Yes.
think it's working. Here on the 2 points, on the first, here in Europe, we've been dealing with the problem of having a regional organization that covers Europe, and our fellowships that are spread across Europe. And what we have witnessed is that works when the regional organization and the fellowships understand that it's mutually supportive, so that we've survived the 40 years because it has been mutually supportive. And when it is not really supportive, and when the fellowships go on their own and think that they are autonomous and can live by themselves, they often fall apart over a period of time. But when there is a more general community at the large regional level here in Europe, with about 10 fellowships, then there's a larger sense of belonging to something that's larger than just the fellowship or just the congregation. And when a congregation goes weak, usually the regional leadership or the regional organization comes and helps that congregation. And if the congregation shrinks, it will shrink. It may last 2 or 3 or 4 years. But what has happened in reality is that when people come back, the regional organization helps the congregation revive and come alive again. And that pattern has happened over the last 40 years. Congregations have shrunk and have grown, and we've had new congregations. But the interaction, the mutual support between the regional organization and the congregations and the fellowships is terribly important. And they have to feel that they are supporting each other. And they have to meet as well. It's important for the congregations to come and meet together, which is what we do here in Europe. Twice a year, we have regional meetings. And the next one is going to be in April. We just had one in October. That's point number one. Point number two on the denomination, I think it's a major mistake. That's my personal opinion of not just simply claiming our Unitarian faith for what it is. We are struggling in Europe, and I've been struggling for the last 40 years in Europe, trying to put Unitarianism on the European map and on the world map as a faith that anyone in the world can claim as their faith. And if you claim Unitarianism as your faith, that can help you become the person that you wish to be, and the person that can help others live better and more fully as well. And that faith does exist. It goes way back. We've had our own work on it here in Europe, and it goes back 2,700 years. We have a faith, and we are struggling in Europe to put that faith alive for people in Europe, and at the world level for people around the world. And when people want to be Unitarian, we have to be able to tell them what that is. And this is what we do. We have a faith, and we should be proud of that faith. Voilà.
Voilà. Thank you, John. And I'm so glad that I put this workshop early so that perhaps some people in Europe might join. So I'm really appreciative that you did join. So my personal thoughts are, much like Terry, I did lots of research on what a denomination is. And there isn't a single definition. So I agree with what John says. I think we should just claim Unitarianism and be done with it and go on from there. Because then, I mean, I think fellowships and congregations across religious denominations feel like they don't want to be out there on their own. And all we have to do is claim we're Unitarians, they can join us, and then they're not there on their own. So I don't have the fears that Todd, I know, has about what would happen if we were to become a denomination.
Judi, I have not had a conversation with Todd about this, although I know his opinion. I'm curious what you understand his fears to be.
My sense is, and he hasn't said this explicitly, it's what I've implied from the conversations I have had with him and what he has said about why he doesn't want us to become a denomination. He thinks denominations can be corrupted. And, you know, he, even looking back to the merger of Unitarianism and Universalism, you know, there's a lot of people who think that that never should happen. That, you know, there was fallout on both sides. And look what's happening now in the UUA. I think corruption comes more with power and who has it and who doesn't. That's my personal take. Whether you're talking about a church or whether you're talking about a government. So those are my thoughts, and I think they're similar to what.
Yeah, Judy, I hope we can hear from the folks that have their hands up as well. So,
sure, Bruce.
Thank you, and my takeaway from our own group, and I really appreciate the gentleman from Hayward who was taking our notes. But the one thing that came out to me strongest was that someone threw out the term, we need to be a moral voice. Now, there was lots of disagreement in our group with whether that being a moral voice involved in sending the entire congregation down to the freeway on to block the freeway, or whether we should just the individual members should be empowered by our spiritual feelings and our individual feelings into church to go out and find our own demonstration or whatever it is we're going to do. And to me, in my limited insight into Unitarian Universalist history, is that we've never been clear to the public about what it is we really believe. And to me, this whole controversy that has shaken the UUA over the last 5 years is a quest by a small, there was a coup to install a small faction that had their own theology. And I don't believe that theology comports with what I understand Unitarian and Universalist traditions to be. And I think we are repeating that same dilemma that Unitarian Universalism has always had in America, of being able to verbalize and express what it is we're about. And I think that whether it's becoming a denomination is an important part of that, but I think the clearer we are in expressing what it is that, what is our moral voice, the clearer we can be about explaining to the world what we are for, not what we're against, but what are we about, then I think we will be more powerful as a religious voice. And again, whether that requires being a denomination or not being a denomination, I was an enlisted soldier for 27 years, and I don't really care too much about theoretical stuff. I want practical stuff. What are we going to do tomorrow? And so whether the theoretical concerns about denomination, non-denomination, what our legal structure is, I'm not too concerned about that. But if we are going to be, and I don't even belong to you, my fellowship does not belong to you guys yet. But if we are, then I want to belong to a faith that knows what its faith is and can express that faith. End of story.
Thank you. Twinkle?
So my little dog might chime in as well. So I have slightly a different view on it, and I could see the benefits of either way, but I definitely think that the NAUA should consider becoming a denomination. If the only reason not to, or the prime reason not to, is because of what the UUA did with its power, I don't think that's a good reason not to do it. I mean, when I look out into the world at the way, I mean, even healthcare, I think most of the people I know believe that universal healthcare is a great idea. Some of the countries who have universal healthcare do not implement it in a way that serves the majority of the people well. it doesn't make it a bad idea. It makes the way that they implemented it wrong. The UUA, if there were a way to create guardrails or some sort of checks and balances so that we could see ahead, when little red flags started, before big flashing lights started, became apparent that there was a coup or control takeover imminent, I think that would be helpful. You know, I was going to be a minister for a second. The Cambridge platform, you know, they talked about how necessary it was for congregations to be able to interact with each other, to support each other. They were talking also about financially supporting each other, which is something that's been all but completely lost at the UUA level. And I hear what others have said about claiming Unitarianism as their faith. But when we are talking in conversations with other people out in the world and they say that they're Christian, well, I don't know very many of us that want to just leave the conversation at, oh, you're Christian. We would very much like to know, are they Southern Baptist Christian? Are they United Church of Christ Christian? Are they Pentecostal, Mormon, Jehovah's Witness? All of those and more claim Christianity as their faith or their belief, but it means something entirely different to every single one of them. So just because the UUA is behaving like the Catholicism's holy see and have overreached what should be congregational polity, I think, anyways, I think there should be maybe more conversation about the pros that Lincoln asked, like what would be the benefits of being a denomination. Thanks.
Thanks, Tom.
So it's an interesting conversation. Everybody I've met in the NAUA is in one way or another a refugee from a denomination that was corrupted by power. Everybody, you're all the same in that way. Some of you left early, some of you stayed till the end. And now I'm hearing people say, well, it doesn't have to be that way. I think when you get too much centralized power, eventually it will corrupt. So I agree with Todd at this point. I think you're struggling with issues of money, how to get more resources, how to get more involvement. Those are big issues. I just want to say that I think you may end up, a denomination almost certainly will end up telling congregations and individuals how they should operate. And I think every church I know has had that happen. You know, what I'm interested in is having a local church that I'm comfortable with, where I can be myself. And as a free thinker, that means if I don't agree with the national church, that's fine. They can do what they want to do, but I'm going to believe what I want to believe. I just think you ought to step back and look at the people who want to make a denomination with guardrails. Well, that really worked well with our political system, didn't it? We all thought we had guardrails until somebody got in there who didn't care about the guardrails. Any of these voluntary ideas only work as long as the people in the positions of power follow them. And if they're just voluntary, which is what guardrails are, it doesn't work. I think I was a little disappointed in hearing this, that most of you folks hadn't attended the Fifth Principle Project a session because they documented how over a 10-year period, the church was corrupted and nobody knew about it. Only key people knew about it. So red flags and red lights and all of this stuff. I don't know if I would stay with the NAUA if it became a denomination. I don't know that, but I'd say I'd have a lot of soul searching to do because I'm sort of through with churches and denominations that want to tell me how I'm supposed to think.
So I'm here because I wanted to support Lincoln raising a really important question. And unfortunately, we're approaching this as though the decision has been made, and I don't think it has. I also think, having been the co-founder in the Fifth Principle Project, clearly understood where the corruption came. And everyone knows it's about power, and power comes from a source, and that source was manipulated to provide only those who could participate in a certain way. In many ways, the UUA and a lot of groups fail because they have the representative delegate fashion voting at the National Assembly. One of the things I recognized in reviewing at the UUA level is that we really small enough, it's like 130,000 people now, small enough to have universal voting on issues, which would mean it'd be hard to gather a full block if every UU actually did have a voice. But having every UU have a voice means every UU has to be engaged and educated and involved, so you have the other side of that problem. I'm simply saying we should really have the conversation. And by the way, I'm a Universalist historian, and this applies to the Unitarians too. There's always been a pushback against central power, about sectarianism. We don't want to be a denomination. In fact, the original UUA was just a gathering of ministers. So it's a question we need to debate, and we need to remove the sense that it's been answered and this is a year or more debate. And probably won't even finish that. We probably got a direction, but it is something that really needs to be done. And our levels and forms of democracy of how we grant power needs to be included in that conversation.
Okay, there's so much. I'm going to try to keep this to one or two points. A couple of people mentioned dropping the name Unitarian, and I am really for that. I think in our congregations, it has been Unitarian Universalist that in our congregation, a whole lot of those people came into it as Unitarian Universalists. They really have no idea what's the difference between Unitarian and Universalist. And I think the name is just confusing. So I know they struggled when they first got together to try to find another name and couldn't find one. That's why they went with Unitarian Universalist, but I don't think it's done us any real favor. Twinkle, I agree with you. I should have used the word spiritual instead of moral when I spoke earlier. But it's still, I'm going to assert that, whatever this organization is, church, or however we choose to define it, I need a place to help me continue to develop and understand my own spiritual basis so I can move forth with the moral understanding why my morals are the way they are and how I act on them in the greater world. And it's ongoing, it's constantly ongoing and learning and changing and growing. So I'm not looking for a church or an organization that it's going to be top-down dictatorial. However, I come out of Catholicism, and sometimes one thing I get really irritated in the UU is the attacks, not just against like Christianity, but about Catholicism in particular. There's this idea that the Pope and then the cardinals speak and that's it. Glory be, amen, hallelujah. That is not what it's about. The conscience is the ultimate decision maker for each and every individual person. So there's much leeway in terms of what you believe, how you act. It was the principles from that, or the underlying basis of Catholicism, spirituality, that brought me into UU. I looked at the 7 principles, and all except the one about democratic process were things I learned through Catholicism. Inherent worth and dignity of all people was God created all people and loves all people alike, and we are one family. Okay, throughout the word God, basically, we still have, so all of that kind of comes in. So that's just my thought on that. A lot of people, including Catholics who've never really studied their faith, don't understand it that well. I had a note so I wouldn't forget. Now I can't read my note. Anyway, I think that basically, as far as the power and stuff, if you have 5 people in a group, you're going to have a discussion. At some point where a decision needs to be made, you're going to have issues around who gets to make it and how is it made. That's an inevitable. So I'm not as concerned. It's kind of like you mentioned our beloved president, that he's getting away with a whole lot of stuff. But then we are sitting there allowing it to happen because most Americans aren't expressing their voice. And the same thing happens in the church. We see what the UUA was doing, slowly changing things and putting themselves in more and more power. How many UUs were willing to speak up and really speak out and go against it? And that's true today. A lot of them who were really incensed just left. So I think that's always going to be an issue. The issue of who holds the power or how is power used and distributed, as long as you have more than one person involved. Anyway, that's it. That's another amen.
Thank you, Lorraine. I'm going to say that Lincoln and John will be our final commenters so that we don't stray into that 9 hours too far.
Okay, well, I just had a couple of brief comments to some of the comments that have been made. The first is to Thomas. You said everyone is a refugee from the corruption of other religions. For decades, the people who joined Unitarians and Unitarian Universalisms were refugees from a more fundamental, from Trinity. And I don't see, and that Trinity was maybe enforced by a hierarchical church organization, but I don't think that, for instance, I can name denominations that have not been corrupted, and in particular, take the Friends or the Quakers. Very consistent denomination for many, many years. They support each other. They make decisions by consensus. They think deeply, they meditate deeply, and they have a moral compass. And so I think there are examples that make a lie out of the argument that everyone is a refugee from corruption. And for decades, that was not a problem with the UUA. It was only a result of the UUA being captured by a particular group at a leadership level that the UUA ended up in the situation it's in now. I am a 5th generation Unitarian, and I would say to the question, should we even be Unitarian? If we lose the name, we lose the heritage. And then what's left? And then finally, how can you claim the moral high ground if you don't claim a moral compass and a moral structure, which Unitarianism with the 7 principles and the 6 before it, going back to 61 and even before then, did. And there was a point in the 80s when we talked about claiming the moral high ground, and we never really succeeded in that, that's for sure. But without being, and I'm just arguing, and I'll stop real quick here. I'm just arguing that I think it is easy to see the faults of what has come before and say that's why you don't want to go forward. And I would argue that the thing you want to do is correct those faults, and put in rules or come to consensus on what it is we do want. We don't have to be hierarchical in order to claim Unitarianism. I'll call it quits there.
Thanks, Lincoln. John?
First of all, I really appreciate the discussion, because we've had discussions like this in Europe, and I'm really happy to be here to hear all of this. It's an enriching experience for me. As I've listened to what has been said, some key words and issues have come to mind, and I'm not going to discuss all of them. I just took them out and thought that maybe they needed attention, and relatively serious attention by everyone. But that's my opinion. The words are the person. The person needs to have not just the moral compass, but the whole person needs attention. And our faith usually addresses that, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. It's just not just moral. The other is theology. The theology comes out as a major issue in the larger sense, and that needs a lot of attention. One word that has not been said, but the elements of that, or the issues that go around that, have come up again and again and again, and that's the problem that we face here in Europe and have faced for the 40 years. That word is governance. Good governance. And that's really tough at the local level, at the regional level, at the international level, and at the whole level of the United States. Governance is tough. It's not an easy subject, and it needs attention. Something that doesn't come out sufficiently clearly for me, listening to you here from France, is that as Unitarians, as an institution, even if we're local, or if we're regional or national or international, is the issue of the duty that we have to our members. We have a duty to the members who come to our congregations and our communities. That needs to be seen. We have a duty to the young people, so that the young people know who they are and where they're going. That when somebody joins our faith, we have to give them that kind of a framework so that they can develop in terms of the principles and the values that we have. And I haven't heard that clearly enough for me, and I think that needs to be focused. The last one is something that just comes up again and again and again in our different communities, and we don't deal with that frontally, and that is group dynamics. Our group dynamics are extremely strong. They sometimes replace our spirituality, and they need to be. We need to work on group dynamics and how they can be more positive at the local, regional, and national and international level. Voilà. That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you all for staying. This has been a great conversation. Terry, I think you recorded it.